Good afternoon. Thanks, Julia. And it's just great to be here. This has been a really impressive conference. It's been great to be able to attend different sessions and learn from all of you on such an important topic, energy efficiency, something that is near and dear to our heart and my heart at PG&E. And it's a real honor here to get to have an opportunity to kind of close out this conference. And what I'm going to be talking about is climate resilience, and something that some folks call it climate adaptation, climate resilience, lots of different words for it. Talk a little bit about what that means for our company, what the linkage is between working to reduce emissions and adapt to a changing climate. Talk about some of the work that we're doing, as well as some of the potential opportunities for even more collaboration in this really, I think, interesting but challenging issue. And then we'll have some time for some Q&A at the end as well. So just real quick, most of you are probably familiar with PG&E. We provide gas and electricity to about 16 million people throughout northern and central California. I've been in PG&E for about 11 years and lead our sustainability team. And small team, within a large organization, which means we get to work with a lot of different organizations. We play a kind of strategic role. We do all the sustainability reporting for PG&E and a lot of engagement. And I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of climate-related issues over the years, including climate change resilience. And just maybe to start, talking a little bit about the science and what is projected to occur. Maybe a little bit hard to read that, so I'll just give you some of the highlights. But what these different kind of graphics show is some projections for the year 2050. And for a company like ours, with a lot of infrastructure, the year 2050, while it sounds kind of far off in the future, that's kind of within our planning horizon as we're making decisions. And cities are also it's very similar. And I think that's one of kind of the parallels maybe that to keep in mind is the linkages between utilities and cities in terms of how we think about and plan for communities where we operate and the communities where we serve. What this shows, just a couple of data points, is that we face a lot of different climate risks over time. There's been a lot of really important research that's taken place in the state of California, and a lot of work continues. So look in the top left-hand corner. What that shows is projections for more hot weather days above 100 degrees, and what are the projections for the Central Valley. And you can't read it probably, but it's showing anywhere between 17 to 21 days on average over 100 degrees in the future. Up in the top right are some projections for increasing wildfire frequency and intensity. And what that shows is that there's projections for a big increase in the acreage of wildfires, acres burned by wildfires in the state of California. In the bottom left-hand corner, those are two kind of examples of extreme weather, events. And the bottom are examples of kind of these longer-term threats, rising temperatures, over time. So as it gets hotter, that has all kinds of implications for all of us. On the bottom left, and the projections about increases in degrees that we're likely to see. In the bottom right addresses sea level rise, something that I know a lot of different communities throughout the state are looking at, very closely. And what projections are up to 2 feet, of sea level rise by the year 2050, which has lots of implications for communities, for infrastructure, for our business, and for all of us. But I think it's also important to recognize that we're starting to see the effects of climate change today. And what this slide shows are just some of the kind of recent impacts that we have seen. And this combination of sort of moving from 4+ years of drought to the recent storms that we have seen, and kind of the extremes. And in the top left, it talks about just the wildfires that we've seen recently in 2015 being the worst wildfire season in the state's history. And what it shows is sort of a map, just gives you a little window, and I'll talk about it a little bit about how we are managing this. And we do, we have a daily map that we're looking at where are the areas of wildfire risk so that we can incorporate that into our planning. In the top right, it talks about, with the drought and all the impacts that have in the state of California. One of the impacts was on PG&E's hydroelectric system. We have a large hydro system. So that, in a typical year, we may get around 15% of our power supply from hydro. During the drought, that dropped to 7 to 8%, which had a lot of implications, including on emissions associated with our electricity. In the bottom right, another risk that we have seen is tied to the drought is subsidence, particularly down here in the Central Valley, where the ground is dropping, and that has impacts for us as a business. We have a lot of infrastructure, and so we've been using a lot of mapping tools from NASA and others to look at where we're seeing subsidence and what are the risks there, and then doing some pilot studies to get out there and kind of actually look at are there any potential risks there. And then in the bottom left, it highlights the recent storms that we've seen this year, where it's kind of been the opposite, where we've had a lot of rain, a lot of precipitation, which can create challenges for all of us. So that's a little bit about kind of what we're all seeing today, what's projected to occur, which brings us to this broader goal of trying to build greater climate climate resilience. And for our company, the way we think about it is, on the one hand, it's really trying to better understand what these risks are. At the same time, really taking steps to try to build greater resilience to withstand these both extreme weather events as well as the longer term risks. And the way we're approaching it is kind of in a couple of different ways, and it's very similar, I think, to the ways that a lot of cities and counties are also approaching this. So there's kind of in the near term area, it is really a focus on improving our emergency preparedness and response, so that whether it's climate related or an earthquake, we're kind of ready, we're prepared. We've got we're well coordinated, with the local emergency first responders, and we do a lot of drills and things like that. And so the more prepared we are, whatever the weather event might be, that's a really an important way to build that kind of that near-term resilience. The other part, which is really challenging, is trying to really understand what are the longer-term risks that we face. And what we have done is a series of vulnerability assessments, and they're publicly available. I had a couple of copies. I'm not sure if there's any left. Happy to send the link out if folks are interested. This is kind of what it looks like, where we've really tried to overlay maps and different scenarios on our infrastructure, on our operations, to try to get a better sense of where some of the risks might be, so that we can build that into our planning. And there's lots of examples of cities and counties who've done a very similar thing. That's a really important step, to try to really understand what are the risks so that you can help focus your efforts and also figure out just the process of doing that. Vulnerability assessment has been a really helpful way to bring together different groups within our company who relate to this in some way, shape, or form. Once you actually start doing that, like any process, you're just kind of building a broad coalition of folks who this impacts in different ways. It may be folks that kind of manage your infrastructure and your assets, and maybe folks who are kind of looking more longer term at planning horizons. There's a whole range of your emergency, first responders within the organization. And so that's been a really helpful process for us. So one of the things that we've been really focusing on is really the governance, around this. How do you manage this? Because you do have a near-term challenges, but you also have longer terms. And I think that's really one takeaway that we have had is just building, governance and systems so that on an ongoing basis you're bringing people together and kind of chipping away at this. And then the third kind of pillar is really engagement and trying to learn from others, participate in vulnerability assessments, collaboratives. Julie mentioned, the ones that the Local Government Commission has facilitated. So just trying to coordinate is, I think, absolutely critical to this. And then just kind of one more slide on just to kind of close out this thought. And it's really important whether you're city, community, or utility. There are what this shows is you've got kind of the climate risks, at the top. Extreme weather, wildfire, drought, and right down the middle is sort of PG&E and the impacts that it has to our assets and all the different kinds of functions, within the business that are involved in trying to understand and address that. But we're all interconnected, so kind of off to the right are all the customers and communities, that we serve. Off to the left is our supply chain and the rest of the grid and all the broader system, water, telecom, that we're connected to. I think that's what makes this such a challenging issue to address is because it affects all of us in different ways, and we're all interconnected. So the more that we are, kind of understanding the impacts and doing things within each of our organizations, but also staying connected to the bigger picture, I think that's how we're going to address, this long-term challenge that we all face. The other thing that this has been helpful for us in thinking about this, and we've shared this with the state and others, is where are kind of the gaps? What's the research that needs to take place to figure out what do we know, what don't we know? And just as one example, supply chain. That's a really complicated thing to get your arms around. Is how could climate change disrupt the supply chain of our business, and what does that mean? And how do you manage that, or how do you reduce that risk? So that's one of the things that's been helpful for us. Is just kind of give some frameworks, just so you kind of get your arms around it a little bit, and you can start to chip away. So. Good news is we're not starting from scratch. A lot of the things that are already happening, and that many of you in this room are working on, are already helping to build climate resilience. Energy efficiency is really important, and we're really privileged to be involved in this area. I know one just example locally. With our local government partnerships. One example is our Fresno Energy Watch down here, where we work with the city of Fresno, and a lot of really successful programs. We have our business energy tune-up program, where we're helping businesses as well as home energy tune-up program, where we're able to, I think, reach over 5,000 households. And I think key to that is finding programs that are really customized to individual businesses and individual households. Another program that some of you may have heard my colleague Jillian talk about a little earlier today is called Step Up, Power Down, which has been a real, a really successful effort working with the cities of San Jose and San Francisco, targeting businesses in those communities, but having a really strong behavioral change, component to it. So engaging the people that work in those businesses around energy efficiency and making it fun. Campaigns around vampire loads and adopting light switches and things like that. And so I think one of the biggest contributions that energy efficiency can make, and some of these programs can make, is simply just building awareness among people, and getting people to think about their energy use, find ways to pay attention to it and save energy. That's really almost the first step, to building climate resilience. And then there's actually, there's different kinds of energy efficient solutions that also have a kind of an adaptation component. And one example of that, you may be familiar with cool roofs. So by, kind of having a reflective surface on a roof, that helps, reduce the energy load in the building. So it's a kind of an energy efficiency approach, but it also can help address like an urban heat-on effect. So it has kind of an adaptation approach. So some of these things that we're doing have kind of a dual effect. Another link kind of in the mitigation, adaptation arena is this connection between water and energy, and this idea that, you know, by saving energy, you can also save water. And you know, this has been a huge effort by many people in the state, particularly during the drought. We've spent a lot of time working with agricultural customers. We can save energy in the way that water is irrigated or through pumping systems. You can save energy and also reduce a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So I think this is a kind of another really good example of how the two come together. There's also demand response, and if you think about demand response, you know, during a heat wave, this can be a really effective tool to drop, you know, the electricity. And many of you are probably involved in these programs, but there's a, you know, it can be an adaptation tool. Just one example here, I think demand response continues to evolve, and there's a lot of creative work happening in this arena. One example of this is a program that we've been doing for the past couple of years with BMW, where we are got about 100 car owners involved in this program, and what we've shown as a pilot is that, you know, PG&E can actually send out a signal that we need to reduce 100 kilowatts at a given moment in time. And the program has worked, and through a combination of these vehicles delaying their charging, as well as a kind of like a battery pack, a second life batteries that used to be in BMW vehicles. They've been able to deliver that 100 kilowatts to the system. And we've been doing it and really shown that this can be an effective way to utilize electric vehicles as a demand response that also can be an adaptation. So what it also kind of gives you is a little bit of a glimpse into the future of a possibility that we haven't even thought about. Is this an electric vehicle program? Is it an energy storage program? Is it a climate resilience program? Is it a demand response program? It's kind of all of the above, and it's just showing how there's kind of this convergence that's taking place, you know, across all these different regions, which is a good thing. So I think one really just important thread in all of this, as we try to think about how to tackle climate resilience, is this, you know, collaboration, and there's a tremendous amount going on, you know, right now in the state of California. The state has demonstrated tremendous leadership. There's a lot of really important research that's taking place, a lot of it being led by the California Energy Commission. There are a lot of tools. If you haven't seen it, the state has a website, CalAdapt, which is a great clearinghouse of all the climate science, you know, that's taking place, trying to make that accessible for people so that you can use it, and they're continuing to invest in that. Also, a lot of really important convenings. The state held a climate science symposium, you know, earlier this year, so there's a lot happening there. Tremendous amount happening locally in our service area. Lots of cities and counties doing vulnerability assessments, stakeholder processes, trying to think about how to finance this work. One example of that, the Bay Area came together last year around something called Measure AA, where it was passed as a ballot measure. Everybody pays $12 as a parcel tax, and for 25 years. And basically what that will raise over that time period is $500 million to fund efforts to help restore the watershed around the San Francisco Bay, including work around flood protection. So it's a nice example of everybody kind of pitching in for the greater good to help keep the bay sustainable, but also to build some really important flood protection as we begin to see the effects of sea level rise. One program that we introduced recently to help, you know, support communities in this area is our Resilient Communities grant program. And the idea here is to provide grant funding, you know, on an annual basis to support communities around different climate risks. And so this is the first year. It's a new program for us. Each year we'll be awarding a total of $200,000, so it's $1 million over 5 years. And you can kind of see the criteria there. Programs that are replicable, that involve partnerships, that focus on disadvantaged communities, and also have a measurable impact. This year, the focus is around increasing wildfire risk. so each year it'll rotate. We just closed the application period, and we're in the process of looking at the applicants. Really solid, really interesting, creative applications. We're going to be announcing the winners later on this summer, but we'll be doing it again next year. We haven't picked, what the risk is. It could be sea level rise, it could be something else. So if you're interested in this, let us know. We're really, it's kind of a way for us also to learn what are the community needs. By doing kind of through a competitive grant process, we're really getting a good window into what are the creative ideas out there to help address increasing wildfire risks. It could be studies, it could be demonstration projects, different things. Let's see, a couple more slides and then we'll wrap up. I mentioned our hydro system. I just thought I'd give you a couple other examples of the kinds of things that we're doing in this area. This is really an interesting project with the UC Berkeley. Given climate change, one of the things that's really important for us is to be able to forecast how much water supply we have, for the coming season. And we can't simply rely on historical models, what's happened over the years. So we are working with students and putting a whole series of sensors out in the forest to measure real-time, snowpack, soil moisture, variety of different things so that we get that data in, use that real-time data to be better able to forecast how much water, we have to deal with. And so it's just kind of an example of the importance of partnering with universities and researchers. Another, I think, kind of exciting area that kind of touches on both the mitigation, adaptation side is vehicle fleets. Communities have them, businesses have them, we have one, and we've worked really hard over the years to try to introduce new kinds of electric battery vehicles into our fleet. One that we're piloting right now is a truck that actually has the ability to export power, and so it has a large battery on it, and it has the ability to power like up to 100 homes. And so because it's an electric vehicle, you have the reduced emissions. It doesn't idle, at the job site, but it also has the ability to export, power back into the grid. In an emergency, we've used these at evacuation centers during the wildfires to power, lighting or cell phones or stuff like that for the community. And then we actually donated one of these to the Napa Fire Department so that they could kind of explore how to potentially use it, in their kind of emergency operations at a scene to power, equipment or schools or things like that. So just something for you to think about. How can we use vehicles, as battery storage, and use those in a way to help build more resilience into our communities and into our systems. And so just kind of this is my last slide. Just as we're moving forward. And building a more resilient energy system, I think this also will help build more resilience into the system. We're doing a lot of different pilot projects and things like that in this area to try to, build a more distributed energy resources into our system. Just one example of that is a project we're doing up in San Jose with GE, Solar City, and a company called Green Charge Networks, where we are testing kind of how do all these systems work together through an energy management system where you've got solar, you've got smart inverters, you've got battery storage in kind of a localized setting. How can we better manage the power flow through these different systems from these different companies so that it connects and we can kind of optimize how the power flows across these different systems with both residential and business customers. And so that's a pilot project that we're doing right now, and it's just an example of one of the ways that we're trying to kind of learn how all this will all work. And I'll just close there by saying that hopefully that gives you a sense of the challenge that we face with regard to climate change, different kinds of challenges. One of the things that's unique about California is because it's such a big state, there's a lot of different geographies, a lot of different climate zones within the state. So we face a lot of different kinds of challenges within California. But I think there's a lot of really important, exciting work taking place, and I think the key is for all of us to find ways to collaborate and come together. Just one example, that Julia mentioned that's been a really effective approach is the approach that the local government commission has taken by building local or regional, collaboratives where communities can come together in an area and share best practices and find ways to work together across the cities and counties, but also with companies. And I think that's probably one of our biggest things to build on, just to find more ways to come together and try to think about and address these challenges, and also find ways to engage the community and the public, in these challenges. It's hard to do, to engage them just like through energy efficiency or any of our programs, that this is something that they are aware of and are able to contribute to. Okay? Thanks very much. So happy to take a question or two if anyone has one. Anyone?
We have volunteers with handheld microphones. If you want to raise your hand if you have a question.
Hi, I'm Paul Brace with SoCal Gas, and I hate to put you on the spot, but most of your presentation focused on the electric side of the PG&E business, and I was wondering in terms of adaptation and some of the scenarios that you shared that are an impact to the electric side of PG&E's business, if you have some examples that you can share on the gas side.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. Yeah, so different systems are affected in different ways, and so we've looked at a lot of different climate risks across both our electric and our gas system. And so just some examples of some risks and things that we're working on the gas side. One is subsidence, as I mentioned. So just the risk to underground infrastructure as a result of that. And we've done some pilots to kind of dig into that and see is there an actual risk there that we need to be working on. Another would be with storms. That can lead to mudslides or landslides, which poses a risk to gas infrastructure and also expose gas infrastructure. And we also we did a pretty extensive project with UC Berkeley looking at the potential impacts of sea level rise on our gas transmission system in the Bay Area. And we modeled sea level rise going into the year 2100, so a really extreme sea level rise scenario. And where would that place additional pressure on our gas system? What's the risk of gas pipelines being exposed? What would we need? And so that we work very closely with our gas integrity management program on that, so that we would learn more about it and kind of build that into their their planning and their systems. So so those are just a couple of examples, but that's kind of the approach that we've taken is. Try to take it step by step, look at different scenarios, kind of overlay them on your assets. Almost you start by kind of getting a macro sense of where are the major kind of areas or issues. And then now where we are is trying to dig in a little bit deeper in different geographies or different areas, and also trying to find ways to work with others who are doing the same thing. Sure. Okay. Oh, there's one.
Hi, Angie Fife with ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. Thank you very much for telling us about your climate resilience plan. I'm wondering how, as the Corporate Sustainability Officer, your work is more broadly incorporated into your overall enterprise risk management, changing rates and that sort of thing.
Sure. It's really interesting. So we've identified this as an enterprise risk for the company. And so what that means is it's part of that PG&E's process. We look at this like we would any other one. So it's very integrated, and that's great because that allows it to build into all the different planning that we're doing. It's also, there's a lot of activity within the regulatory community within the state of California Over the past couple of years, the California Public Utilities Commission, the California Energy Commission, the Governor's Office, and other agencies have held different public convenings to share what are the risks to the energy system in California, what's happening, what more needs to be done. And it's not just the investor-owned utilities. SMUD has been a real leader, in this area. LEWP is doing work in this area. So utilities throughout the state of California are doing different work, doing different pilot projects, and sharing what we're learning. And then the way that our company operates is we have a general rate case, which is the funding to run our business every 3 years. That is now changed to be kind of a risk-based process. And so the way it works now for utilities, this is the first cycle that we've gone through, is we do a first filing which identifies the major risks that we face as a business. And then our general rate case is intended to show what we need to do to address those risks. And so our filing is due in November of this year. We're going to have a chapter in there related to climate adaptation and talk about where we are in these risks, how we are working to understand them, and what we need to be doing. So that's a direct kind of tie to how we're thinking about it, within our business, and it's challenging. So the kind of questions we're asking is, we can expect a certain amount of just as an example, wildfires, in the future, just based on what we know. But looking out to the future, do we really think there'll be a measurable increase, in our next cycle in wildfires? And if so, is there more that we need to be doing to mitigate the risk of those wildfires, or is what we're doing right now, sufficient to cover it? And so it's kind of, you start at the high level, and it does get kind of more granular as you start actually working with folks within the company who think about this. And just from what I know about the cities and the counties that we have worked with, a lot of them are going through a very similar process where it's often a stakeholder engagement process where they're looking at different, sea level rise has been a really important one that a lot of communities have done. But I've also looked at other risks. What are the major risks within the community? How do we address them? How do we engage our community around this? And there's a project that's going to be kicking off shortly in the Bay Area called the Resilient by Design Challenge, which is built after a similar effort after Superstorm Sandy, where they'll identify a handful of spots around the bay that are vulnerable, particularly vulnerable to sea level rise, and bring in international teams to really take a focused look in those communities at that particular risk and to figure out what is the right solution, for this community to help address, this risk. So that ideally, it's something that's long-lasting and is doable. And they've done a really nice job of engaging, the community, the businesses, the elected officials, and the others in this. So I think that's going to be kind of and it really was a great project in New York City after Superstorm Sandy. So that's an example of a kind of a large regional collaborative process. And then it's possible that some of the Measure AA funding could be used to fund some of these things down the road. But I think everyone's kind of trying. The other utilities, SoCal Gas, Edison, SDG&E are also very active in this area. We're all collaborating. We're also talking to utilities, all over the country. Entergy, who experienced Hurricane Katrina, Con Ed, and the other utilities. There's a lot that we can all share with each other on this because there's a lot of similar approaches there. So. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Do we have time?
Thank you so much again, Chris. I'm hoping that this year will be the first of many years where we'll be talking about bridging the mitigation adaptation gap. So it was really helpful to see all of PG&E's initiatives. I'm excited to continue featuring this topic to hear more about all of your initiatives because it's really so critical that we take a more integrated approach. So before I invite our final speaker up to provide closing remarks, I wanted to highlight just a few housekeeping items. For all of our poster presenters, you should see that your posters are displayed around the room. So if you're able to grab that on your way out, that'd be great. Anything that's left over at around 4 p.m., we'll probably either recycle them or maybe take them with us, but probably recycle them. So please take that with you. We can help you ship it off. We have a couple of boxes remaining. Also definitely want to encourage folks to take resources that are remaining on any of the sponsor tables out here, but also in the resources tables that are out in the hallway. And thank you for everyone who brought out resources. We also have extra flash drives, the USB drives, and programs and participant folders, so would love for you to take that back to colleagues who may have missed this. So now I'm really excited to invite Courtney Kalashian up to provide a few closing remarks. When I asked her about her bio so I can introduce her properly, she said, oh, just tell them Courtney loves EE. And I know many of you are already really familiar with Courtney, but for those of you who aren't, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. She's the executive director of the San Joaquin Valley San Joaquin Valley Clean Energy Organization, sorry. She's also helping to organize and lead the Rural Hard to Reach group. She's part of the California Energy Efficiency Coordinating Committee, and that's just a few. And even when I came down for my site visit, she took me on a fabulous drive tour all around Fresno. So thank you so much, Courtney.
Thank you, Julia. I do want to take a moment to recognize the SEEP partners, so the Local Government Commission, IGLE, and the Institute for Local Government. Did I get that right for those? Okay, and then the IOUs, so PG&E, Southern California Edison, Southern California Gas Company, and SDG&E. Thank you for putting this on. Thank you for recognizing the need to have a forum like this. I have been to every single SEEP forum, so I've not gotten any older, amazingly, but somehow I keep going to all these forums. And it's fantastic. I absolutely love the work that we get to do. It's not a joke. I do love energy efficiency. I love the data, the mindset, the psychology, everything that goes into it. And to be able to spend 3 days once a year with people that feel the same way is really good for the soul. So thank you for putting this on, Julia, and everybody else that's doing these things that I don't know who you are, but ringing bells and taking pictures and making sure I don't get lost, which I've done 20 times already. Thank you for putting this on. It's an excellent forum. It gets better every year, and thank you for what you're doing for us. So it's the end of 3 days. We still have a fourth for those of us in our rural working group, so we're going to get out of here as quickly as possible so you can get on the road. However, being able to leave requires your participation, so just keep that in mind. There's been a lot of wonderful presentations, there's been a lot of great content, inspiring things to get up and go, right? You leave these kind of conferences with arrows in your quiver or just a fire burning within you to get out and do better for yourself, for your local government partnership, for your local government, and for your constituents. And that's fantastic. But keep in mind, the theme of this year was bridging the gap. And so many gaps were identified from every level, from the opening, hearing about the gap in the federal leadership, from hearing about the gap in transportation and automation, and all of these things that we're dealing with. And there were so many solutions that were presented, so many people that are doing really unique, interesting projects, very complex, very simple, all of them beautiful in their own way. But I think what I've taken away from this is we're filling gaps. There may be one big gap that we have to bridge, that we may have to fill, but I'd like to say you guys are doing that, and it's just a matter of putting you all together and recognizing that you need to be together for that. So I'd like to go back to what Council Member Baines said at the beginning, and he said it's not filling the gaps, it's not what we're doing. What we have to do is stand in the gaps. We have to be the ones that are there doing the work. So, everybody stand up. I know, you hate me. Just come on. Indulge me for these last few minutes. And now move to the center of the room. Nobody's going to steal your stuff. Nobody cares about your stuff. Come on. All right, here we go. Up, 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 on the edges in. Come on, let's go. Oh, God, this is beautiful. Come on, slow poker.
Professional cat herding.
Okay, so there's this term that I absolutely adore, and it's happy warriors. because the work that we all do is so hard. But I like to call us happy EE warriors, okay? So we are the happy warriors of energy efficiency. We are the ones that have to stand in the gap and do the work every single day to make sure that there is no longer a gap. Once that's done, we figure out what we do with the rest of our life, but I'm pretty sure we have some good years left on us. So go out there, do well, be joyful in the work that you do, and remember the inspiration that you felt over the last 3 days as you go forward and do that work. Thank you for coming to Seek. Thank you for being in my hometown, and I hope that you all have a wonderful and safe trip home. Thank you.